Welcome to the PHNX Coyotes podcast, brought to you by the one and only DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah Merrill here in studio with Craig Morgan. Steve Peters joins once again from Minnesota, and we have another special guest today.
Wow.
Many guests this week. Yes, she is here in the waiting room. We're super excited to welcome back for her second appearance on the PHNX Coyotes podcast, InGoal Magazine writer Catherine Silverman. Welcome to the PHNX Coyotes podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
What's up, Kat? This is
not too much.
This is a big day for you. I understand you're celebrating a birthday for an increasingly significant other. Of course, it's National Hot Dog Day, as we've already discussed, and I know at the top of your list, you're here to talk with us. That's the top thing for you today, I'm sure.
We can't tell my child that. It's her first day of school, too.
Oh, wow. You got a lot going on today. How'd you carve out time for us?
I have a little time to kill around lunchtime today.
Yeah, look at the boxes behind you, too, so you have no work to do around the house either, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have not a single room in our house is fully move-in ready yet. We have flooring in 2 rooms.
Oh, that's
it's
misery.
fully painted in most of the rooms, but we no longer have popcorn ceiling, and I think that's the biggest win here. So
wait. Talk to us about that process. That's not an easy process.
Yeah, we actually bought this house from an original owner. It's a 1967 build, so it had that lovely popcorn ceiling. The owner was like 90 when she decided she didn't want to live on her own anymore. So the house was very white, like all the carpeting, all the walls, all the cabinets, everything was white. And so we were like, we're gonna redo everything, but we need to get rid of this popcorn ceiling before we can move anything in. And we wanted to hire someone to do it, but we were like, we can do this ourselves. And we made it through 2 rooms with like the respirator masks and everything.
Oh,
there's
God.
asbestos. And we were like, you know what, this is not the move. So we had to hire someone to come in and finish it up for us and formally clean it out. And that was a whole deal because nothing's expensive right now, obviously. So
White didn't work with your lifestyle as a mother and a pet owner? No?
I mean, I think I'm too messy for white, much less, the dogs and 5-year-olds. So
Well, I don't think a lot of people know. I mean, some people know that you've left us. You've moved on
not like I'm not dead.
You're not
like
dead.
left
That's true.
left
Yeah.
is all relative, Craig.
But you've gone to a better place, though. We can say
Wow.
that, right?
Wow.
It's true.
Yeah,
San Diego's way better than Phoenix.
Just share with us so we can all live vicariously with you. First of all, what's the temperature like? Just tell people where you're living, Kat, so we can all just get angry at you.
I'm living in Chula Vista, California. I'm in San Diego. I'm about 4 miles from the beach, and it's currently 72 or 3 degrees from the high today. It's pretty humid today, though, so it feels like 72. It's 73% humidity.
You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it through
I
that.
think I'll survive. Yeah.
Oh my
Tough, but I'll endure it.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a good life. So I hope all of that's going well. You clearly have more work to do, as we can see in the background.
What do you mean? This is the office.
That's how I live.
Like
So
forever. Don't look at the paint at the top right there.
So we obviously have had you on the show before. We're going to talk about a happier topic this time, and a topic that's very dear to you. I'm curious how much you have been able to pay attention to the insane goalie carousel this offseason. There's always movement in the offseason, but this offseason has been really wild for goalies in particular.
Yeah, I thought it was funny last summer. I was like, oh, look at this. COVID gave us, a season shutdown. It gave us a bubble, and now it gave us this crazy goalie carousel. And then this year, it's even wilder than it was last year. I felt like everybody tossed goalies around, and I think until we see a massive salary cap jump, we're going to keep seeing this as teams realize that they paid their goalies more than essentially they can really justify, or they have somebody who outperforms a prospect who needs to get a pay raise, and they end up just having to boot someone else. And we get what we got this summer, which is everybody moved.
Literally.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're going to look at some of the individual moves, but as a former goalie yourself, actually, there are 3 goalies on this
Why
show.
does this always happen to me?
Well,
like I'm always the odd one out with many goalies. So many goalies. This is I shouldn't have.
I don't know how to answer that. It's not a conspiracy.
I shouldn't have come.
I just have a lot of goalie friends because goalies are better people.
Okay.
I think that's a personality thing right there.
There it is.
You're hanging out with all the goalies, it says something about you.
That's true. But I will say, just as a longtime Coyotes fan, like every time I wanted to know something about goalies, I'd always go to Cat's Twitter because that's the place to be. So we're really happy to have you today to help us kind of sort through this jumble of the NHL goaltenders. So thank you for coming.
I just went in alphabetical order here. I didn't go in. We're gonna ask you for your sort of grades on this or your assessment of these moves later. But let's start with the hometown team. We kind of know what the Coyotes are trying to achieve. I don't even know if they're done yet, if they're going to try and find another goaltender. But what do you think of this tandem right now? John Gillies and Karel Vejmelka. What do you think of this tandem?
Oh,
how's that for putting you on the spot instantly?
I feel bad because I think John Gillies has, I think he underperformed a little bit at times. I think he wasn't given a whole lot to work with. It's not like he's been put in any situations where he can easily cruise through. He's always been kind of that odd guy out when you look at the depth chart. But I don't know. I feel like they have to have someone.
Yeah, you're looking at a guy like you look at Vejmelka, and we John Gillies has been in the league for 5 years and he's played 20 fewer games than Vejmelka has. So between the two, their goals against average is near 4 and their save percentage is below 90 on paper. And this is, might be great guys in the room and they might be super guys to ride to the rink with. But this tandem on paper as a National Hockey League tandem has 84 games combined and nearly 4 goals against average. So when you're trying to compete for Connor Bedard, what's the best way to do that? Put out a tandem that has a 4 goals against average. So I get what they're doing. I can't imagine that the Coyotes will be going to October with this tandem. I can't imagine it.
No.
There has to be somebody else. I mean, you lose 2 of the pieces down in Tucson, so you still got Prosvetov down there, but you still need a goalie there. To me, Gillies is going to end up there, I think.
But that's been what happens to him the last couple of years.
Yeah, and he's a serviceable 3, and you get injuries, and he can pop in and out. That makes more sense to me. I still think there's something going to happen at Arizona, but who knows?
I think it's funny that you say that, though, because I think if they want to see, if they want Prosvetov and Vejmelka to essentially be their guys moving forward, if they think there's enough promise there, you almost move Carroll down, right? Like you shift him down to the AHL, give him some reps behind
and play.
Not what they're going to ice this year, right? I think there's that. I
was waiting for the adjective.
You don't want to give it, because we saw that in Chicago, right? When they had Colin Delia and Kevin Lankinen being thrown to the wolves every night with no relief, and it did nothing for their development. It essentially taught them how to tread water, but not how to actually swim forward. And I think if they want either of their current prospects, they have to give them some development time. So they have to add someone else, right?
And that's what, Kat, it's interesting you say that, because when I talked about Karel Vejmelka on this show, I'm not convinced that he might not just be the bridge guy, that he's the guy that gets them to the new building. He gets them to when all these draft prospects they're getting now are ready to play. He gets them there and then they go shopping. I might be wrong. I mean, maybe he is. He's still young and inexperienced. He may continue to improve and build his game and get more consistent. When he was good, he was very good, but that consistency wasn't there. So I'm not bashing on Karel Vejmelka. He had a lesser defense in front of him, a lesser team in front of him, and he had some games where he was absolutely lights out. But if you want that guy to get you to the promised land, maybe this is just the bridge guy. I don't know, Kat. I'm not convinced the Arizona Coyotes have their goaltending house in order quite yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to another team that is also going through a little bit of a.
So I can get rid of my Twitch. Let's just get this out of the way.
Yeah. Fire sale. The Chicago Blackhawks. This offseason, they've acquired Peter Mrazek from the Leafs 2 more years at $3.8 million AAV. That is crazy. And then out in Chicago is, you just mentioned, but Colin Delia and Kevin Lankinen. Thoughts on the Chicago Blackhawks?
We have to isolate that clip where I mentioned Chicago and Kat's reaction is,
and Craig's reaction is literally twitching.
All right, Kat, the Chicago Blackhawks, the floor is yours.
I really thought that team had more direction to their teardown than they've been showing. I feel for Peter Mrazek. I feel for some of the other Blackhawks players too. Sorry, they're gonna have to play with that this year, but I don't know what the status of health-wise is for Peter Mrazek. I don't know if they brought him in as someone who's essentially going to be on LTIR for a long time. I don't know how healthy he's going to be this year. He hasn't proven any sort of resiliency over the last handful of years. It looked like a cap dump for Toronto. So I think it's good that they moved on from Delia and Lankinen, and I liked them both. I thought that Lankinen was a pleasant surprise, and I still think that Colin Delia probably would have done better behind any other team. But yeah, that's what a fall from the Corey Crawford era. We're one full season removed from that, right?
Yeah, and you're looking at Alex Stalock there now as their backup. So they've moved on to, and Kat, as I went through this exercise today, and I went through, got every tandem in the league currently, and you look at Mrazek and Alex Stalock, to me, it's another tandem that does not scream playoffs.
No,
it's a mediocre tandem, and you go through the league, and there are a lot of mediocre tandems, and this clearly they had to pick up the contract for Toronto. I get it, but this one does not give you the warm fuzzies. And Alex Stalock's bounced around to a lot of teams. Again, I'm not disparaging these players. They're playing in the National Hockey League, the best league in the world, but they're not at the level of some of the top tier goalies in the league. And this is another tandem that is going to keep this team towards the bottom with Arizona.
It's interesting because they're two completely different directions to those bridge tandems. Essentially, the Coyotes have, like you said, John Gillies, 5 years in the league. Carell's younger-ish. He's mid-20s, right? And
yep.
And then you have Alex Stalock and Peter Mrazek. And Peter Mrazek, I believe, is flirting with 30, if not just over.
Yeah.
And then Alex Stalock's got to be like 39 now. I feel like he's been in the league.
Yeah, it feels like it if he's not.
He's
in goalie years, yes.
Those are not guys that you bring in with the expectation that maybe they'll show some positive development, and you're not taking a gamble on maybe he's our bridge guy, but maybe he's our future. You're bringing those two in as end of their career bridges.
You're trying to get Connor Bedard.
You're trying to get a Connor Bedard, but you're not bringing in any potential underneath that. And that's a team that they've drafted a couple guys in recent years that I just was pretty confused about. I know they drafted one guy from the U.S. development team who I think is supposed to be pretty good, but they also drafted Dominic Bass out of a high school hockey team in Maryland. In DC. Yeah, he played multiple tiers below everyone else, and then played in the USHL for a year, and now he's playing college, and he's doing not incredibly there. So I don't know what they're doing there. I assumed that was a team that would take a chance on a younger guy who could maybe pan out longer term, and instead they kind of did the opposite. So
yeah, and see what I think, Kat, I look at these teams and I look at Arizona too. I figured this is the guy they'd have for a backup. You look at Stalock or Mrazek, somebody's got more tenure in the league, early 30s, more experience, can fill in, maybe help guide Karel Vejmelka through the path. And again, maybe they still will. But to have them both on the same team, I'm with you.
These
Let's
teams
throw a
might
24-year-old in there. Yeah.
It's Chicago and Arizona. They love doing that.
That's true.
Yeah, fair point. Maybe it will happen, Kat.
Yeah.
Craig will get on the phone.
All right, I'm gonna switch over from the teams that have an entirely different goal in mind to three teams that really interest me. They're grouped together here alphabetically, as it turns out. Colorado. I want to ask you what you think of that move for Georgiev and letting Darcy Kuemper walk. So let's start with that one, because this is the Cup champion we're talking about, and I know Darcy wasn't the reason they won the Cup. Let's say that, but what do you think of this tandem that they're going to war with to try to defend now?
Honestly, I think we can't look at it just in a vacuum, because I think it was smart that they shored up bringing in Alexandar Georgiev immediately, essentially, because last year we saw them really get, pardon my French, they got kind of screwed when it seemed pretty confident that they would have Philip Grubauer and Pavel Francouz moving forward, and then all of a sudden, their starter walks in free agency to Seattle, and so they ended up, I think, overpaying a little bit for Darcy Kuemper, just to bring in a guaranteed guy who they lucked out by having him still available on a rebuilding team. I think they could have very easily found themselves in a really tough spot there. So shoring that up and then saying, if Georgiev needs a bounce back year. So if Darcy Kuemper had wanted to stay, I think there's a way they could have maybe made an additional move there to move Georgiev back out if they needed to sort of flip him, so to speak. But I think it was fine the way that they did it, just to keep themselves from really scrambling at the last, the 11th hour there. I think Darcy Kuemper had some really good games for them last year, and I think he had some really bad games for them. And so I'd love to see if, once again, just moving away from a rebuilding team, giving a little bit of a more consistent defensive structure for Georgiev, I think could be a really cool thing to watch. Because New York has not been known for their consistency the last handful of years.
Yeah.
But I'm still nervous about Pavel Francouz, just because he missed an entire season for injury.
Yeah.
And then he came back and he looked good, but I think when I see something like that, it's a little bit of a gamble, but I know that they do have a strong prospect pool underneath. They have Justice Sanunin, who I think is really a fantastic up-and-comer. So I'm not as worried about them as I think some people are.
How do you split this workload then with these guys? I mean, is this just an even split at this point, just waiting for somebody to emerge, maybe to seize the role?
I think a rough sketch of 50-50, that seems to be how they operate each year, where they start with that rough 50-50 and then you adapt as you go, so you're not overloading someone at the beginning of the year and then needing to keep working with them. And I mean, we've seen Toronto do that in the past, where they overload a guy right to start and then need to keep going with him. And by the time the playoffs roll around, he's got nothing left in the tank. And I like that Colorado starts off a little bit more conservatively by splitting it evenly. And then as somebody starts to emerge, they shift them into more of a prominent role. And I think that's probably how more teams should be doing it.
What about the Detroit Red Wings? Pete, did you have something?
No, I was just going to say the luxury that Colorado has too is they don't need to be, they don't have to have a Vezina Trophy winner to win the Cup. They've proven that. So I think I think they can keep these two guys healthy, and their average goaltending, their goals against, is a goal better than both of the Coyote goalies. That's good enough. They just have to be okay. And I think both of these goalies are good enough to be okay. And I think that means Colorado, for me, is still the favorite to win the Western Conference.
All right, the Detroit Red Wings add Ville Husso, 3 years at 4.75 AAV, and out is, I have to say it this way because I always say it this way, Thomas Greiss.
Oh my God.
Sorry, I broke that. Sorry,
wow.
Sean. Apologies.
Everybody on headsets
later. Your thoughts on this?
I love that. I think they did a
my pronunciation of Greiss or adding Ville Husso?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think that's a team that did their goaltending road on their rebuild correctly. They didn't overload with old guys on long contracts. They didn't throw new guys to the wolves immediately with no backup support. I think that having Greiss and Alex Nedeljkovic was a really snazzy move, and I still don't know how they pulled that off. I'd still love to find out exactly how that managed to all shake out. But I think Ville Husso was, and Steve, I'm really curious what your thoughts on him were. He's a guy who I I watched him in St. Louis at the AHL level for years, and I was like, show me something to prove that you still deserve to be in this depth chart. And he was like, no, thank you. No. And I'd almost completely forgotten about him. And then last year he looked great. And I was like, okay.
But last year, there were points last year that he was the best goalie on that team. Like
easily.
He took the mantle and ran with it, but then you get to the playoffs and it's you're not sure again. And I mean, that's how why they were able to let him go, is because Binnington gets he won the cup years ago, but he's fallen off. And so I think that allowed, he was the better goalie in the playoffs. Husso did not play as well as he did in the regular season. The last 20 games, Husso was unreal. So that's why I agree with you. This Detroit move, I like this tandem a lot, if Husso can play like he did a year ago and not like he did 3 years ago. So if he's continuing to mature and develop, I really like that tandem in Detroit a lot.
I think St. Louis did a really good job with the goaltending coaching depth chart that they've brought in over the last couple of years. They had David Alexandar. I believe Dan Stewart came in as their development goaltending coach. Both guys that I think are really good at what they do. And I think that made a huge difference for Ville Husso, which I think is going to be fun to watch as he moves to Detroit, because we've seen guys who really worked well under certain tutelage, and then, another team said, "Oh, I love that development for you. Let's take you." And then for whatever reason, it just doesn't click as well with their new team. But I think as far as where Detroit is, because they're not at the end of a window by any stretch. I think they're just starting to flirt with rejoining the playoff window, right? And so I think this is a good gamble for them, because worst case, they set themselves back maybe a season or two as they look for someone else, but I think it's a good look for now.
So as we talk, and there's still a list of teams that we want to get through, but I was curious, so I pulled out my DraftKings Sportsbook app to pull up the Vezina Trophy odds for 2022-2023. And right now, the goalie with the best odds to win the Vezina is Igor Shesterkin at plus 250. Next is Vasilevsky plus 500, and then Sorokin at plus 800. And then there's a group of 4 goalies at the back of this pack with the worst odds, and those are Craig Anderson, James Reimer, Peter Mrazek, and Karel Vejmelka. And plus 30,000 for these.
Get in on that.
You could have
no, don't get in on
sat
that.
me down in a dark room and said, "Are Craig Anderson and who is the second one?
James Reimer."
James Reimer. What? You could have sat me down and said, "Are these two still in the National Hockey
League?"
Like, no, they retired 5 years ago.
Exactly. Are they still in the league?
What?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So maybe don't put your money on those 4 at the back, but there's some good ones up at the front. We got UC Saros plus 1,000. Jake Ottinger had a standout year last year plus 1,800. So these are all things that you can bet on DraftKings now. So get in on the action. It's really fun to put money on futures because you kind of forget about it, and then it could possibly pay you out later. So if you haven't already, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code PHNX, make your first deposit, and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code PHNX only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Who we got next, Craig?
We had the Minnesota Wild, and I'm really curious. Not only they had to keep Marc-André Fleury, and I wondered if they would, or if Colorado would make a strong play for him. They ended up keeping him, but in the process, the Cam Talbot exit was also an interesting storyline. Your thoughts on the Minnesota Wild?
So that's a team that I, despite my best efforts, forget about all the time. They need to do more to grab me. But I mean, I think that was a tricky gamble on their part too, because I think Marc-André Fleury has exceeded my longevity expectations. I think when it comes to just his hockey sense, his ability to read the game, his adaptability, like he's above average in all those facets. But at some point, he plays such a high octane style that he's gonna start missing a few beats. And every year that a team gambles on him over someone else, I'm like, oh, I hope that plays out for you. And I hope it plays out for him, because he's, by all accounts, not just a good goalie, but one of the nicest guys across the league. I I kind of feel for Cam Talbot there. I think that's a really good move for Ottawa. They've made a couple of those. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I think with Minnesota, Cap, for me, Minnesota's problem is still Suter and Parisi. I mean, you're still looking at $13-14 million on their cap. And until that money goes away, they're not ready to win. That's my opinion. They may still try to make the playoffs. But until those guys go, you get just like all these other teams we talked about that aren't ready to win. I don't know if it matters. And I like Marc-André Fleury. If they get to the playoffs again, great. Cam Talbot to me was always, you wanted more good games, but I don't know if he's a guy carrying the cup around, Main Street at the end of the season either. So I don't know if this hurts them. I don't think they're better. I don't think this is a better tandem than they had a year ago. I think Talbot Fleury is a better tandem than where they are today. And Ottawa is probably on the cusp of getting better. And I don't mind their tandem. I think their tandem's a little better than what they had a year ago with Anderson. So I think Ottawa improved. I just don't think Minnesota's ready to win yet.
I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. Craig actually went out of alphabetical order and skipped one. So I'm going to go back to Edmonton.
Does he know the alphabetical order, though? Are we sure? Do we need a copy editor?
About Edmonton,
we have
too.
to talk about Edmonton.
I know you have thoughts about Jack Campbell.
Signed Jack Campbell, 5 years, $5 million AAV, and then obviously leaving is Mikko Koskinen to Switzerland.
I'm always pretty careful when I try and discuss a goaltending tandem with Mike Smith. But especially on a Phoenix-based podcast, because there are a lot of strong feelings about him. But as long as he is there, and they still have Dave Tippett in charge, right?
No, he's out now.
No, he's out.
Jay Woodcroft's there now, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Mikko Koskinen, Dave Tippett's favorite guy. Yeah.
I mean, I'm slightly more confident without Dave Tippett at the helm that Mike Smith could end up permanently benched if he's not performing up to expectations. But because that was always for me just that little asterisk of, is Mike Smith going to the detriment of the overall tandem, get more than his fair share of starts as he ages gracefully into a permanent backup role? And I like Jack Campbell a lot. I think he's had a really fun career arc. That's seen a lot of improvement from both a mental and emotional and technical standpoint. He's really a perfect example of maturation correctly as a goaltender. But I mean,
Kat, do you think he'll be better out of the Toronto marketplace and the Toronto media eye?
And why did they let him go? Do you think that was a good move?
No, I don't think it was a good move for them, but he's kind of jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire when it comes to media, because he's in Edmonton now. I think that Mikko Koskinen was not the answer. I think that the tandem that Edmonton had last year was not the answer, but I certainly don't think that Mikko Koskinen was the problem. They lost a game 4-1, and he was the one who was blamed for that loss. And I remember some pretty fiery comments from him after that game, where he just wasn't happy with the way that a lot of the blame was being laid at his feet for just some inconsistencies on the roster as a whole. And I don't love that environment for Jack Campbell, because like I said, he's a guy who's really he's very emotionally invested in his performance, and he takes his wins and losses pretty hard, and he's a really diehard team guy, which I think Edmonton can use. Having someone who's just number one goal is supporting his team, but sometimes that's at a detriment to his own ability to shake off bad performances. So I think there's a potential for that to be a really good move. I think there's also a potential for it to, we've seen Edmonton do this before, where they get really close and they bring in promising goalies who just don't have, like, that's not the right environment for them. And we end up with what happened from the Ben Scrivens era on. And I think we maybe run the risk of that again.
Yeah, it's interesting to me too. The Edmonton Oilers team, you talk about the pressure, and if Edmonton hadn't reached the Western Conference Finals this year, maybe expectations would be different, but now their expectations are high and they expect Jack Campbell to be the difference. And if he's not, you're right, the environment could be exactly the same in Edmonton as it was in Toronto. But to me, the Edmonton Oilers are still the same team. They're still not a great defending hockey team. And you throw Mike Smith as your backup, that's a tough mix, man. Like, I agree with you. Couldn't say more about what Mike Smith could be as a positive or a negative. And I don't know this, and there's no basis in fact, and I don't tweet this, Craig. I'm not sure if Mike Smith's not sitting at home going, that's it. I might be done. I had a great run. I finished in the Western Conference Final. I'm 40 years old. They're bringing in this young kid. I'm not going to get the minutes. Tip's gone. That might be it. I would not be surprised if this gave him an opportunity to walk away, because I don't think this is going to be a comfortable situation for Mike Smith, and he won't be happy. And if he's not happy, it's not a happy room.
Yeah, and that's what Kat was artfully dancing around Mike Smith as a backup,
right.
Accepting his role is
he's not a fan of being a backup, which can be a strength, right? I think it drives him to be successful. I think that his almost singular-minded drive to not be relegated to number 2, whereas we see other guys who are like, yes, I'm totally happy being the number 2 as long. I think Jack Campbell did a really good job of that behind Jonathan Quick. I think that he should have gotten more starts earlier in LA than he did, and he was nothing but supportive of sitting second string to Jonathan Quick there during not amazing years for him. So I think that maybe if the mentalities were reversed, although I don't know if at his age, maybe Mike Smith would be more willing.
Maybe
to sit back a little bit.
Thanks for talking for a little bit while I was tweeting. Steve Peters says Mike Smith should hang
retiring. Mike Smith, according to Petey, Mike Smith should retire.
Time to get that out.
Jeff Merrick's calling.
Retweeted, and Petey is now. No, I'm going
to skip over Ottawa because we've already talked about Cam Talbot, and skip over St. Louis because we've already talked about Thomas Greiss. So we only have a couple more teams. I might skip New Jersey because I'm just bored. Unless you have any thoughts on. He takes kind of check.
Yes, that's another one of those tandems, though. That just does nothing for me. Like Blackwood, as he's going to be the presumptive starter. I don't know. And Vitek Vanacek, it's again, this team's not ready to win. Team's not ready to win, so they're fine. They're going to eat minutes. They'll get through 82 games, and then they'll all go golfing. I'm not excited about New Jersey's at all.
Okay, let's close the book on New Jersey, and let's move to those last 2 teams then, because obviously Toronto moves on from Jack Campbell, and they. Matt Murray?
I was shocked.
Do you understand this? Help me understand this guy.
So obviously I think I love talking to goalie coaches in the off season. Both goalie coaches about their own players and goalie coaches about other teams' players. Just for contextual information. And there's no goaltender that goalie coaches are more readily excited to talk about than Matt Murray, because everybody has a theory. So far, I haven't spoken to a single goalie coach who thinks that it was the environment. They're all pretty much in consistent agreement that it's a technical thing, that something with Matt Murray's technique started to get a little shaky, and he then snowballed a little bit when he was back in Pittsburgh. And some people went, he's only had 3 years that were poor. Those are outliers. Watching him play, they weren't. The mistakes that were being made, and Steve, I don't know if you saw it when watching video. I mean, it was consistent flaws in his game. You could watch and predict, kind of like Martin Jones. You could kind of predict what was going to go wrong on a goal before you watched it.
Boy, I could hear you talking in my ear in the press box on that one in particular. Yeah,
that was. I mean, you can't
move laterally this one direction.
God bless him, man. And he is still young, but he has a lot of mileage. And with goaltenders, it's not just about age, it's about reps, because making sure that they can instinctually make these moves and instinctually play a certain way, you ingrain it more concretely with every season that you're playing a heavy workload. And he has a lot of those at his age, which is kind of unique for a goaltender who's Matt Murray's age. So I don't know if that media environment, with the pressure that team is under to make it out of the first round, with Matt Murray's, because I saw some improvements down the back half of last year, but not enough. I didn't see him fully move out of his funk and back into what we were used to. So I believe John Elkin is still in Toronto right now. So that's someone who's very familiar with his game. I think it's from a coaching standpoint, a best case environment for him, but maybe not the team for that coaching environment to get him back where he needs to be. And adding, I believe they added Ilya Samsonov as
well. Is he an adequate fallback option?
And that's another guy who I wish we'd gotten to see what he could have been, being consistently developed by Mitch Korn, who is more or less who selected him to become what they'd hoped he'd be in Washington. So I don't know.
This tandem to me in Toronto doesn't seem better than like Matt Murray and Jack Campbell. Heads up, I'm going to take Jack Campbell tomorrow if I've got to have a goalie starting in my net. So Toronto fans may be disappointed. Now, having said that, Matt Murray's lifted the cup. He's won. Does that make a difference?
He made it out of the first round of the playoffs. Good for him.
Maybe. So I'm with you, Kat. I'm not convinced this is the right place at the right time for Matt Murray to rejuvenate his career. Toronto's not a place you resurrect yourself. I don't think. That's a hardest atmosphere in the league to play.
Yeah.
We'll see. Wish him the best of luck. I mean, good.
Huge expectations on Toronto this year too.
Mm-hmm. Boy.
Yeah.
That's a long contract too. We're 1 year into, what was it, 5 years, 6 years? That he was given in Ottawa.
I think he only has 2 years left, though. I think he only has 2 years left.
Did he play 2 of the years in Ottawa? I know when he signed that contract, I was like, that's not a prove-it contract.
The scrutiny on Matt Murray this year is going to be so high. It's going to the microscope on him. I mean, maybe he responds, and maybe that kind of pressure, and he finds it again because he's struggled. He's really struggled.
Yep. All right, closing it out, last but not least, the Washington Capitals signed Darcy Kuemper, 5 years, $5.25 million AAV, and we talked about Samsonov and Vanacek leaving. What are your thoughts on Washington getting the reigning Stanley Cup champ, Darcy Kuemper? Your reactions have been amazing today.
I'm trying. So a lot of these goaltenders are good people to have in the room, and they're good at performing in certain environments. And it's so hard to predict what the environments are going to look like this year, just because for the last handful of years, we haven't known. We haven't known which teams are going to come out with like a team-wide outbreak of COVID and leave a goaltender hung out to dry when he's the only one who can play for 2.5 weeks. So I think we're seeing that in contracts, which I think any other guy who had played like Darcy Kuemper did with the Coyotes, then went on to win the Stanley Cup prior to the COVID era, I think would have been signing 6.6 mil annual average or higher, without question. And the fact that he's only signed for 5.2 mil per is indicative of just the caution that teams are showing right now. Washington for me is a massive question mark, because I watched a handful of their games last year. I have no idea if that's a good team or not. Just no earthly idea. And I think they're not sure either. So
yeah, they're a team that's they got those older veterans. They're not, the young guys aren't quite ready to play. Their windows, if it's not closed, it's pretty darn close.
So close. They're at the point where Ovechkin's trying to see if he can Jaromir Jagr it into retirement at this point. He's won the cup. I don't know. That's a weird team for me.
The bigger fear for me, Craig, is their backup. I mean, we've known Darcy Kuemper. We know him firsthand. We've seen him. His ability to play 50 to 60 games is highly questionable without being hurt. And the backup in Washington is Charlie Lindgren. He's played 29 games. 29 games in the NHL over 6 years. I'd be concerned. I think that Kuemper's a guy. Even you talk about Francouz. Francouz has played a lot of games in this league. He sat the year out after the Coyotes saw him in the playoffs, but still he's played games. Charlie Lindgren's played 29 games over 6 seasons. He's going to play this year because Darcy Kuemper's going to take breaks. I'm telling you. So that's the concern I have for the Capitals as a whole. Kuemper didn't have to be great. I don't know. And the American League, Kat, you're on fire with your prospects and AHL guys. So Craig might. No, Craig.
Yeah, and listen, they could always make another move still. I don't know how that's going to play out. I agree with you.
You're right.
Rely on Darcy Kuemper to play that heavy workload. I mean, he did that one season with the Coyotes, but other than that, he did have some injury issues. Washington really felt like goaltending was their major issue last year. Some people may disagree with that. They really did feel that was their issue. So they feel like they shored it up with Darcy Kuemper. But yeah, I don't know if you can go into the season with this tandem and feel, yeah, okay, we're going to make one more run at it.
You know who their number 3 is? It's Zach Fucali.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have a pair, and so that's interesting because they have a pair of guys who played behind Carey Price.
Yeah. And Zach Fucali, the expectations out of the draft when he was drafted were extremely high.
He was a kid who he was kind of a Jack Campbell for me, where his expectations for himself were almost too high, and he's one of those guys who, if he lets his team down, he feels it and it starts to snowball. And so I think he's managed to turn it around because he was playing in the Coast for a while, and I think he's gotten himself back to where he kind of needs to be. And so I'm more confident in him than I was 2 or 3 years ago. Charlie Lindgren, I thought, looked really good, and I forgot he was in Washington. But he's just been a quiet grower when it comes to goaltending. That's the clip right there. I think they're both good guys, but like you said, they don't have the reps, partially because of the environment they played in before leaving Montreal, where if you weren't named Carey Price, you had no expectations that you were going to get more than 10 or 20 games a year, essentially. And so that's a gamble for Washington. All right.
Yeah. Well, Kat, we're going to ask you for your ultimate judgment in just a second. After going through that whole goaltender list, I feel like I need a drink. Like, genuinely, I do.
Several GMs may need a drink,
yeah,
too.
right? Lucky for us, we are fully stocked at Four Peaks here at the PHNX office. Literally a fridge full and more. So
we do get to drink on the job.
We do get to drink on the job, which is amazing. So I might crack one open when I have lunch after the show. And we'll definitely be cracking one open, or I will, at least next Wednesday. We'll be at Four Peaks on Wednesday the 27th. So be sure to join the PHNX team out there. We'll be out there all day long on the 27th on Wednesday at Four Peaks on 8th Street in Tempe. So come join us. You can get on the Wi-Fi, do a little work from home action, but you'll be working from Four Peaks. Come say hi. We'll be there the last Wednesday of every month. And also be sure to enter our Toast of the Month sweepstakes at gophnx.com. You can win a Four Peaks $50 gift card, a PHNX shirt of your choice, and a PHNX annual membership. So you can enter that at gophnx.com. We love Four Peaks. I really do think I'm going to have one at lunch. I'm not kidding. Why not?
I can't.
I know you can't, so I'll have two. One for each of us.
We'll get to that in a minute.
If I must. I'm
not going to make you rank all of these teams, but if you had to pick a winner and pick a loser, what do you got?
Can I pick 2 losers? Because I think Chicago and Toronto probably get to hang out there together, and then I don't know. I think probably Colorado and Detroit both sit right at the top for me there.
Interesting.
Kat, who wins the Vezina next year? Who's your Vezina favorites going into the 22-23 season?
Jeremy Swayman.
Wow, I like it off the board. Wow, I like it
off the board.
Look at you, Kat.
I'm gonna pull up his odds. I have one.
Yeah, Leah's putting the money down right now.
Well, I have one question though.
Don't make me lose you money.
No, I do have a question. Right now, obviously the Coyotes are not looking to win now. They're looking to win a few years down the road. If you're the Coyotes going into the 2023 draft, and I have no idea what the goaltender prospect pool is next year, if you're the Coyotes, do you try and draft a goalie now if you don't, and try and develop them, or do you just kind of test the open market in 5 or 6 years down the line when they're more of a playoff team?
6 years. We're gonna have like 37-year-old prospects out there. That's tough. I think they should be looking at the open market. because there are a lot of guys who've been passed over in the draft just because, I mean, the OHL shut down for an entire season.
Yeah.
The WHL had a modified season. The QMJHL had a modified season. The Ivies didn't play last year or 2 years ago, sorry. So a lot of goaltenders that were in draft eligible age this year and last year missed an entire year of development. And so a lot of guys who were there was this conception, like sort of perception that this year was a bad draft year for goalies. And it was more sort of that a lot of the guys who were draft eligible looked like they were in their draft year -1, looked like they were almost a year behind where they should have been. And so talking to a couple goalie coaches this summer, they said, look at how these guys do once they wrap up their junior careers. And I think there will be some good signings there that maybe were passed over in the draft altogether just because they didn't have the availability to, like, they didn't have the numbers to look at and confidently draft those guys. But I think along those lines, the kids who have been playing this past year and who are going to play this year that are draft eligible, we're going to have a better sample size of what their numbers look like and what their development looks like. So I think we could see a return to kind of what we've seen from the drafts the last 4 or 5 years, where there have been a lot of really good goalie prospects for teams to pick up. And I think a team that doesn't take a chance on 1 or 2 of them in the next few years, I think we're past the era where teams can go an entire draft without drafting a goalie. I think that's sort of becoming a thing of the past, or at least it should be.
Which the Coyotes did this year, and that surprised me a little, but maybe with their timeline, they felt maybe they're eyeing the next couple of drafts. So it's definitely something.
I think a lot of the guys from this year, because there were some guys who looked like they were on the right development path, but were behind where they should have been. And I think those guys, a couple of them got passed over entirely. And so I think those guys are going to be available as overage draftees next year. And then some of them who were in their draft +1 re-entry to the draft are going to be essentially free agents next year. And a lot of those guys, teams were like, it's a strong skater year. We might as well pick those guys up on entry-level deals or on minor league deals. And the goaltenders were kind of expecting that too. A lot of goaltenders were sort of expecting that this was not the year that teams were going to confidently pick them.
Okay. Well, before we let you get back to the beach, I have to tell you, speaking of goaltending, I'm going in for hip surgery next week.
Oh.
Yeah. And when my surgeon looked at my x-rays, he's like, ooh, goalie hips.
Sounds about right.
It's starting.
Can you imagine the 3 of us are goalies, and if the 3 of us combined to put on the gear all at once, we still would be smaller than Robin Lehner in Vegas. That's frightening.
That's true. That's very true.
Oh my gosh.
Well, best of luck with that, Craig.
Yeah. Yeah,
seriously.
You can watch my entrance. I'll be on a walker for a little while.
Yeah, we're gonna get background music as Craig approaches the mic and camera. Like.
Sean can mess with it like Monty Python, so I'm continually approaching and get farther away.
Well, Kat, thank you so much. We seriously appreciate your insight. We talk goalies a ton on this show, but it's great to have some expert analysis. So we appreciate your time with that, and we'll just hold you on to the end since we're wrapping up. Yeah. We're great content here at PHNX. We hope that everyone watching, if you're not already, become a member at gophnx.com. You can sign up for an annual membership and get a shirt from the locker. When you do, you can try your first month just 50 cents. If you want to try out month to month, join our members only Discord. Lots of great perks to becoming a member, not just Coyotes content, but content for all the teams in Arizona, including the college teams. So lots of great stuff, a lot of exciting stuff coming this summer and going into as more sports season starts to pick up. So we hope everyone considers becoming a member. Any final thoughts from everyone here before we wrap it up?
Do you have a guest room?
I'm in it. I'm in one of the 2 guest rooms.
No, Kat, when Craig asked, say
2
no.
guest rooms, all right. Petey, we're both there.
Maybe
we'll
go
to
to a San Diego Gulls Tucson Roadrunners
totally should
matchup.
We'll go to a Gulls.
Yeah.
Kat's already got 1 kid around her house. Doesn't need 2, Craig. Gee. Kat, this has been amazing. Talking goaltending, this is fantastic. so happy you came on today and gave us some insight. This is a lot of fun, and I don't want hockey season to start yet. So let's everybody cool their jets and watch baseball for a while. It's too soon. Too soon.
Oh my goodness.
On that note,
thanks so much for watching, everyone. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, PHNX Sports. Follow PHNX Sports across all social platforms. Like and subscribe. Leave us a review wherever you get your podcast, and follow us on Twitter at PHNX_Coyotes. We have an audio episode coming tomorrow. We're talking to the Puckpedia founder, Hart Levine. We'll have a fun show Friday live at 11 a.m. So be sure to join us, follow along. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.